Ethan Caldwell was once a name that everyone knew, whispered with admiration in boardrooms and coffee shops alike. At just 28 years old, he had become one of the youngest billionaires in history, thanks to his groundbreaking tech startup that changed how people communicated around the world. His journey from a small-town kid to a global icon seemed like something out of a movie. But now, sitting stiffly in a cold, sterile courtroom, Ethan's life felt more like a tragedy than a success story. The room buzzed with tension as reporters scribbled notes and cameras flashed outside the courthouse windows. Ethan sat at the defense table, staring blankly ahead. His usually sharp suit hung loosely on his frame. He hadn't been eating or sleeping well since the charges were filed. The accusations against him were heavy: embezzlement and fraud. Someone had accused him of stealing millions from his own company's charitable foundation to fund his luxurious lifestyle. To make matters worse, the evidence stacked up against him included forged documents bearing what looked like his signature. Even though Ethan swore he was innocent, it seemed like no one believed him anymore. The prosecutor painted a grim picture. During the trial, they claimed Ethan had grown greedy after achieving so much success, using his position to line his pockets while pretending to care about helping others through charity work. The media ate it up, running headlines like "The Fall of a Tech Genius" and "How Greed Destroyed Ethan Caldwell." Friends who used to flock to his side disappeared quickly when the scandal broke. Investors pulled their money, and his company's stock plummeted. It was hard to believe this was the same man who had inspired millions with his vision of connecting the world. As the judge prepared to announce Ethan's sentence, the young billionaire couldn't help but reflect on how drastically his life had changed. Just a few years ago, he was giving interviews about innovation and dreaming of changing the future. Now he faced the possibility of spending years behind bars for crimes he insisted he didn't commit. He clenched his fists under the table, trying to stay calm, but his mind raced with thoughts of regret and anger. How had it come to this? Who could have done this to him? Outside the courthouse, two figures stood quietly, watching the proceedings unfold through the glass doors. They were identical twins, both dressed in tattered clothes and carrying a worn leather folder. Their names were Caleb and Jonas, and they looked nothing like the polished professionals usually seen around Ethan. Dirt smudged their faces and their hair was unkempt, but their eyes burned with determination. They weren't there by accident. They had come with a mission. Caleb and Jonas had known Ethan long before he became famous. Back then, he was just another struggling college student, working odd jobs to pay his tuition and volunteering at a local homeless shelter whenever he could spare the time. That's where he met the twins. At first, they bonded over shared struggles. Ethan talked about his dreams of starting a business, while Caleb and Jonas spoke about wanting to turn their lives around. Over time, Ethan went beyond just talking. He used his connections to help the twins secure temporary housing, and even found them part-time jobs. For a brief period, it seemed like things might finally be looking up for all three of them. But life has a way of pulling people in different directions. When Ethan's startup took off, he moved across the country to focus on building his empire. Caught up in meetings, deadlines, and the whirlwind of success, he lost touch with Caleb and Jonas. Meanwhile, the twins' luck ran out again. Without Ethan's support, they ended up back on the streets, fighting to survive day by day. Yet despite their hardships, they never forgot the kindness Ethan had shown them. Then, a few months ago, fate intervened in an unexpected way. While rummaging through trash bins behind an office building, one of their usual spots for finding food or discarded items, they stumbled upon something extraordinary. Hidden inside a crumpled bag was a collection of documents that revealed a shocking conspiracy. Bank statements, emails, and even surveillance photos pointed to someone deliberately framing Ethan for the financial crimes he was now accused of committing. The person behind it wasn't some random hacker or low-level employee. It was Victor Langston, a ruthless corporate rival who saw Ethan as a threat to his own ambitions. At first, Caleb and Jonas weren't sure what to do with the information. They knew it was important, but who would listen to two homeless men claiming to have uncovered a massive fraud? Still, they couldn't ignore the opportunity to repay Ethan for the help he'd given them years ago. So they carefully gathered every piece of evidence they could find, storing it in the weathered folder they now clutched tightly. Every night they pored over the documents, piecing together the puzzle until they were certain they had enough proof to clear Ethan's name. Now standing outside the courthouse, Caleb and Jonas exchanged nervous glances. This was their chance, their only chance, to set things right. They had rehearsed what they would say 100 times, but fear still gripped their hearts. What if no one believed them? What if security guards threw them out before they could speak? Despite the risks, they knew they had to try. After all, Ethan had been there for them when they needed him most. Today, they intended to return the favor. Inside the courtroom, the judge adjusted her glasses and began reading aloud the verdict. Her voice echoed ominously, each word sealing Ethan's fate. Outside, Caleb nudged Jonas, signaling it was time. Taking a deep breath, the twins pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped into the room, ready to change everything. The story takes us back to a time when Ethan Caldwell wasn't the billionaire everyone knew today. He was just another college student, juggling part-time jobs and late-night study sessions, trying to make ends meet. His dreams of building a tech empire were still just sketches on napkins and scribbles in notebooks. Life was tough, but Ethan had a stubborn determination that kept him going. What many people didn't know about Ethan was that he had a soft spot for helping others. Even though he barely had enough for himself, he volunteered at a local homeless shelter every weekend, serving meals and lending an ear to those who needed someone to talk to. It was during one of these volunteer shifts that Ethan first met Caleb and Jonas. The twins stood out because of their striking resemblance to each other, but also because of their quiet demeanor. They weren't loud or demanding like some of the other shelter residents. Instead, they kept to themselves, sitting in a corner and sharing a single bowl of soup between them. Ethan noticed them right away and decided to strike up a conversation. At first, the twins were hesitant, unsure if this well-dressed college kid could truly understand their struggles. But Ethan's genuine curiosity broke the ice. Caleb and Jonas told Ethan about their lives before ending up on the streets. They had grown up in a small town, raised by a single mother who worked tirelessly to provide for them. When she passed away unexpectedly, the twins found themselves without a support system. Jobs were scarce, and rent was high. Before they knew it, they were evicted from their apartment and forced to live on the streets. Despite their hardships, they hadn't given up hope. They dreamed of finding stable jobs, saving money, and maybe even starting their own business someday. Hearing their story, Ethan felt a deep connection. He saw parts of himself in them, his own struggles with poverty and his unrelenting desire to succeed. Over the weeks, Ethan became a regular presence in the twins' lives. He didn't just serve them food. He listened to their ideas, encouraged their ambitions, and even helped them practice job interview skills. One day, while working his part-time job as a delivery driver for a local office supply company, Ethan overheard his boss talking about needing temporary workers to help move inventory. Without hesitation, he recommended Caleb and Jonas for the gig. His boss agreed to give them a chance, and soon the twins were earning a modest income. With Ethan's guidance, the twins managed to save enough money to rent a tiny studio apartment together. It wasn't much, a single room with peeling wallpaper and a leaky faucet, but it was theirs. For the first time in years, they had a roof over their heads and a sense of stability. Ethan celebrated their success with them, bringing pizza to their new place and joking about how they'd all made it. In those moments, the three of them felt invincible, like nothing could stand in the way of their dreams. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. As Ethan's startup began gaining traction, his schedule became overwhelming. Between coding marathons, investor pitches, and networking events, he barely had time to sleep, let alone keep in touch with the twins. At first, he promised himself he'd visit them soon, but days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. By the time Ethan secured major funding for his company and moved across the country to expand his operations, he had completely lost contact with Caleb and Jonas. For the twins, Ethan's absence left a void. They missed his encouragement and the sense of purpose he had instilled in them. Without his guidance, it was easy to slip back into old habits. Their temp jobs ended, and without steady income, they struggled to keep up with rent. Eventually, they were evicted again, returning to the streets they thought they'd escaped for good. This time, however, they carried something with them. A deep gratitude for the brief period Ethan had been part of their lives. They often talked about him, reminiscing about the kindness he had shown them and wondering how he was doing. Years passed, and Ethan's name became synonymous with innovation and success. The twins occasionally caught glimpses of him on TV or in newspapers, marveling at how far he had come. But they never imagined their paths would cross again, until fate intervened in the most unexpected way. One chilly evening, while scavenging through dumpsters behind an upscale office building, a routine they had fallen into out of necessity, Caleb spotted something unusual tucked inside a discarded bag. Curious, he pulled it out and discovered a stack of documents. At first glance, they seemed ordinary. Bank statements, emails, and photocopies of contracts. But as Caleb flipped through them, his eyes widened in shock. These weren't random papers. They were evidence of a massive conspiracy. Jonas joined him, and together they pieced together what they were looking at. The documents revealed a trail of deceit leading straight to Victor Langston, a powerful corporate rival of Ethan's. Langston had orchestrated an elaborate scheme to frame Ethan for embezzling funds from his own company's charitable foundation. The forged signatures, fake invoices, and manipulated records all pointed to one goal: destroying Ethan's reputation and taking over his company. At first, the twins couldn't believe what they were seeing. Why would anyone go to such lengths to ruin someone like Ethan? But as they dug deeper into the documents, the truth became undeniable. Langston saw Ethan as a threat, a young, innovative entrepreneur whose ideas were reshaping the industry. Rather than compete fairly, Langston chose to eliminate the competition by any means necessary. Caleb and Jonas knew they had stumbled upon something big, something that could change everything. But they also knew they faced an uphill battle. Who would take two homeless men seriously when they claimed to have uncovered a corporate conspiracy? Still, they couldn't ignore the opportunity to repay Ethan for the kindness he had shown them years ago. If there was even a slim chance they could help clear his name, they had to try. For weeks, the twins painstakingly organized the documents, making sure every piece of evidence was accounted for. They stayed up late into the night, poring over bank statements and email chains, connecting the dots until they were certain they had a solid case. The leather folder they carried became their most prized possession, holding not just papers but the hope of redemption, for Ethan and perhaps for themselves. As they watched the news reports about Ethan's impending sentencing, their resolve hardened. They couldn't let him face the consequences of a crime he didn't commit. Caleb and Jonas made a pact. They would do whatever it took to get the evidence into the right hands, no matter the cost. Little did they know, their actions would soon send shockwaves through the courtroom and change the course of Ethan's life forever. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. The judge had just begun reading Ethan Caldwell's sentence, her voice steady and deliberate as she recounted the charges against him. Every word felt like a hammer striking a nail into his coffin. Ethan sat frozen, his face pale, his hands gripping the edge of the table so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He barely registered the murmurs of the crowd or the flashes of cameras capturing what everyone assumed would be the final chapter of his story. Outside the courthouse, Caleb and Jonas stood nervously, their hearts pounding in unison. They had rehearsed this moment countless times in their heads, but now that it was here, doubt crept in. What if they were too late? What if no one listened to them? They glanced at each other, silently reaffirming their decision. This wasn't just about saving Ethan. It was about doing the right thing, even if it meant risking everything. With a deep breath, Caleb pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom, Jonas close behind him. The sound of the doors creaking echoed through the room, drawing every eye toward them. The bailiffs immediately moved to intercept, their faces stern. "Stop right there," one of them barked, stepping forward with an authoritative glare. But Caleb didn't hesitate. Holding up the worn leather folder in his trembling hands, he shouted, "Your Honor, please!" We have proof that clears Ethan Caldwell." The entire courtroom froze. Reporters stopped typing mid-sentence, lawyers exchanged bewildered glances, and even the judge paused, her eyebrows raised in surprise. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, all eyes turned to the twins standing in the doorway. Their ragged appearance, tattered clothes, dirt-streaked faces, and unkempt hair made them look out of place in the polished, formal setting. Yet there was an undeniable intensity in their expressions, a fierce determination that demanded attention. The judge leaned back in her chair, studying the twins carefully. She motioned for the bailiffs to hold their positions. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone sharp but curious. Caleb swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. We're friends of Ethan's, from a long time ago, and we have evidence that proves he didn't commit these crimes." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Some people scoffed, dismissing the twins as desperate attention seekers. Others leaned forward, intrigued by the sudden twist. The prosecutor stood up, visibly irritated. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. These individuals clearly have no credibility. Let them speak," the judge interrupted firmly. She fixed her gaze on Caleb and Jonas. "You have 5 minutes. Make it count." Jonas stepped forward, clutching the folder tightly. His hands shook as he opened it and pulled out a stack of papers. "This is bank statement after bank statement showing transfers from Victor Langston's accounts to shell companies set up to mimic Ethan's charitable foundation," he explained, his voice gaining strength with each word. "These emails confirmed that Langston orchestrated the entire scheme to frame Ethan, and these surveillance photos show Langston meeting with someone who forged Ethan's signature on the documents used as evidence against him." As Jonas laid out the documents on the judge's bench, Caleb added, "We found all of this in a dumpster behind an office building. At first we didn't know what it meant, but once we pieced it together we realized it was proof of what really happened. Someone wanted to destroy Ethan, and we think we know why." Ethan, who had been sitting in stunned silence, finally stirred. He stared at the twins, his mind racing. Memories flooded back. Long nights spent volunteering at the shelter, helping Caleb and Jonas find jobs, sharing meals and laughter in their tiny apartment. He remembered the gratitude in their eyes when he helped them get off the streets. Now, here they were, risking everything to save him. The judge examined the documents closely, her expression growing more serious with each page. She called over the court clerk, whispering instructions. Within moments, copies of the evidence were distributed to the prosecution and defense teams. Lawyers scrambled to review the material, their earlier confidence shaken. The prosecutor tried to downplay the significance of the documents. "Your Honor, this is circumstantial at best. It could easily be fabricated." "It's not fabricated," Jonas interrupted, his voice firm now. "Every detail checks out. You can trace the money trail yourself. And if you don't believe us, track down the person in those surveillance photos. They'll tell you exactly what happened." The judge held up a hand to silence the prosecutor. Turning to Ethan, she asked, "Do you know these men?" Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, Your Honor. I met Caleb and Jonas years ago, when I was still in college. They helped me see the value of giving back, even when I had very little myself. I lost touch with them after my company took off, but I never forgot them. I don't understand how they ended up with this evidence, but I trust them completely." The courtroom erupted into whispers. Reporters scribbled furiously, while spectators craned their necks to get a better look at the twins. No one could deny the gravity of the situation. If the evidence was legitimate, and it certainly appeared to be, it meant Ethan Caldwell wasn't guilty. It meant someone else had gone to great lengths to ruin him. The judge tapped her gavel sharply, restoring order. "Court is adjourned until further notice," she announced. "I want investigators to verify the authenticity of these documents immediately. Mr. Caldwell, you are free to leave pending the outcome of this new development." As the gavel struck, chaos broke loose. Reporters rushed toward the twins, bombarding them with questions. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing every angle of the scene. Ethan rose from his seat, his legs shaky but his heart full of emotion. He walked over to Caleb and Jonas, tears welling up in his eyes. "Why did you do this?" he asked, his voice choked with gratitude. Caleb smiled faintly, though his own eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Because everyone deserves a second chance, Ethan, and because you gave us ours once." For a moment, the three of them stood there, surrounded by noise and chaos, yet connected by something far deeper, a bond forged in kindness, resilience, and redemption. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light onto the steps of the courthouse. It was a small sign, perhaps, but one that hinted at brighter days ahead, for Ethan, for Caleb and Jonas, and for justice itself. The hours following the dramatic courtroom interruption were a whirlwind of activity. Investigators worked tirelessly to verify the authenticity of the evidence Caleb and Jonas had presented. Bank records were cross-checked, emails traced to their origins, and surveillance footage analyzed frame by frame. Meanwhile, reporters camped outside the courthouse, desperate for any update on the case that had turned from a straightforward sentencing hearing into a media sensation. By the next morning, the truth began to emerge. The documents provided by the twins painted an undeniable picture. Victor Langston, a ruthless corporate rival who had long envied Ethan Caldwell's success, was behind the entire scheme. Langston's plan had been meticulous. He used shell companies and forged documents to siphon money from Ethan's charitable foundation, making it appear as though Ethan himself had embezzled the funds. The goal was simple yet devastating: tarnish Ethan's reputation, dismantle his company, and seize control of his groundbreaking technology. When investigators confronted Langston with the evidence, his carefully constructed facade crumbled. At first he denied everything, his polished demeanor masking panic. But as the weight of the proof pressed down on him, cracks began to show. He admitted under questioning that he saw Ethan as a threat, a young innovator whose ideas were reshaping the industry in ways Langston couldn't compete with. Rather than adapt or innovate himself, Langston chose to destroy the competition through deception and betrayal. Langston's arrest sent shockwaves through the business world. Once hailed as a titan of industry, he was now exposed as a fraud, his empire crumbling around him. News outlets replayed clips of his perp walk, his tailored suit replaced by handcuffs and a look of sheer humiliation. For many, it was a sobering reminder that greed could bring even the most powerful figures crashing down. Back at the courthouse, Ethan stood alongside Caleb and Jonas, watching as the prosecutor formally dropped all charges against him. The judge addressed the courtroom, her tone firm but compassionate. "It is clear that Mr. Caldwell has been the victim of a malicious and calculated attack. Justice demands that we acknowledge this truth and ensure those responsible are held accountable." As Ethan walked out of the courthouse a free man, the crowd erupted into applause. Reporters shouted questions, their cameras flashing like strobe lights. Ethan paused briefly at the top of the steps, shielding his eyes from the glare. Beside him, Caleb and Jonas stood tall, their faces glowing with pride despite their disheveled appearance. They had done what few thought possible. They had saved Ethan's life and career. Ethan turned to face the twins, his voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his gaze shifting between them. "You didn't just save me today. You reminded me of who I used to be, the person who cared about people more than profits." Caleb shrugged modestly, though his smile betrayed his pride. "We're just paying back the favor, Ethan. You helped us when no one else would. This was our chance to return the kindness." Jonas nodded in agreement. "Besides, everyone deserves a fair shot, even billionaires." Ethan chuckled softly, but his expression quickly grew serious. He knew this wasn't the end of the road, it was a new beginning. Overwhelmed by gratitude and inspired by the twins' courage, he made a decision right then and there. "I want to do something meaningful with this second chance," he said firmly. "Something that honors what you've done for me." Over the next few weeks, Ethan poured his energy into creating a foundation unlike any other. Named the Caldwell Hope Initiative, It aimed to provide comprehensive support for individuals experiencing homelessness. The foundation offered not only housing, but also job training programs, healthcare services, and educational opportunities. Its mission was bold yet simple: empower people to rebuild their lives with dignity and purpose. But Ethan didn't stop there. He insisted that Caleb and Jonas play key roles in running the foundation. Who better to lead this than the two people who understand exactly what it means to need help and to give it? He told them during one of their planning meetings. At first, the twins hesitated. They weren't sure they were qualified to take on such responsibility. But Ethan reassured them, reminding them of the resilience and resourcefulness they had shown throughout their lives. "You've already proven you can handle anything life throws at you," he said, "and you've got me, and a whole team, to back you up." With Ethan's support, Caleb and Jonas embraced their new roles with enthusiasm. They worked closely with architects to design a state-of-the-art facility that combined modern amenities with a warm, welcoming atmosphere. They collaborated with social workers, educators, and medical professionals to develop programs tailored to the unique needs of the homeless community. And they traveled across the country, sharing their story and inspiring others to contribute to the cause. As the foundation took shape, so did Ethan's own transformation. Gone was the aloof billionaire who had become consumed by success and recognition. In his place stood a humbler, more grounded individual who valued human connection above all else. He spent hours volunteering at the shelter where he had first met Caleb and Jonas, reconnecting with the community he had neglected during his rise to fame. He listened to stories, shared meals, and rolled up his sleeves to help however he could. The grand opening of the Caldwell Hope Center marked a turning point for everyone involved. Hundreds of people gathered for the event, including former volunteers, donors, and beneficiaries of the foundation's early initiatives. The building itself was a marvel, a sleek, glass-fronted structure surrounded by lush greenery. Inside, walls adorned with vibrant murals depicted scenes of hope and renewal. Each room bore the name of someone who had contributed to the project, from major philanthropists to everyday citizens who donated what little they could. During his speech, at the gala celebrating the center's launch, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. "A year ago, I thought my life was over," he admitted, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I faced losing everything, my freedom, my reputation, my dreams. But thanks to two extraordinary men, I found something far more valuable, a reason to keep going." He gestured toward Caleb and Jonas, who stood beside him, dressed in suits tailored specifically for the occasion. Their smiles radiated joy and accomplishment, a stark contrast to the weary faces they had worn just months earlier. "These men taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or achievements," Ethan continued. "It's measured in the impact we have on others' lives. And together, we're going to make sure no one gets left behind." The audience erupted into applause, many rising to their feet. As Ethan stepped away from the podium, he pulled Caleb and Jonas into a tight embrace. For the first time in years, he felt truly fulfilled, not because of his net worth or accolades, but because he was using his resources to make a difference. In the weeks and months that followed, the Caldwell Hope Center became a beacon of hope for countless individuals. Families found safe shelter, job seekers gained skills to secure stable employment, and those struggling with health issues received the care they desperately needed. Caleb and Jonas thrived in their leadership roles, proving that compassion and determination could overcome even the toughest challenges. For Ethan, the experience redefined success. He realized that while innovation and ambition were important, they meant nothing without integrity and empathy. By giving back to the community, he discovered a deeper sense of purpose, one that enriched not only his own life, but also the lives of those around him. As the sun set over the bustling city skyline, Ethan stood on the rooftop garden of the center, looking out at the horizon. Beside him, Caleb and Jonas joined him, their bond stronger than ever. Together, they had turned tragedy into triumph, proving that even in the darkest moments, humanity's light could shine brightest. and, though the scars of their past remained, they carried them proudly, as reminders of how far they'd come and how much farther they could go together. Months had passed since the grand opening of the Caldwell Hope Center, and its impact was already being felt far and wide. The once empty halls now buzzed with activity, families settling into temporary housing units, students attending workshops in the education wing, and volunteers bustling around to ensure everything ran smoothly. Every corner of the building seemed alive with purpose, a testament to the vision Ethan, Caleb, and Jonas had worked tirelessly to bring to life. Ethan's days were no longer consumed by boardroom meetings or high-stakes negotiations. Instead, he spent much of his time at the center, immersing himself in the work that had become his new passion. He greeted newcomers with a warm smile, listened intently to their stories, and offered whatever support he could. Whether it was helping someone draft a resume, connecting them with job opportunities, or simply sharing a meal, Ethan approached each task with genuine care. For many residents, seeing a billionaire roll up his sleeves and serve alongside them was both surprising and deeply inspiring. Caleb and Jonas, too, had transformed in ways they never imagined possible. Gone were the days of scavenging through dumpsters or sleeping on park benches. Now they walked confidently through the center's corridors, overseeing operations and mentoring others who faced challenges similar to those they'd endured. Their journey from homelessness to leadership inspired countless individuals, showing them that change was possible no matter where you started. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Ethan stood on the rooftop garden of the center. It had quickly become his favorite spot, a peaceful retreat where he could reflect on how far they'd come. Below him, the streets teemed with life, but here, surrounded by potted plants and twinkling string lights, there was a sense of calm. Caleb and Jonas joined him, carrying steaming cups of coffee. "You know," Caleb began, leaning against the railing, "I never thought I'd see this day. Us standing here running something like this." He gestured toward the sprawling facility behind them. "Feels surreal," Jonas nodded, sipping his coffee thoughtfully. "Yeah, but it's not just about us. Look at all the people we've helped so far. Families finding homes, kids going back to school, adults landing jobs. It's incredible." Ethan smiled, feeling a swell of pride. "It's because of you two. None of this would have happened without your courage and determination. You didn't just save me. You reminded me what really matters." The twins exchanged glances, their expressions softening. They still marveled at how drastically their lives had changed. What had begun as a desperate attempt to repay an old debt had blossomed into something far greater, a movement fueled by compassion and resilience. As the weeks turned into months, the Caldwell Hope Center continued to grow. Donations poured in from across the country, allowing the foundation to expand its reach. Local businesses partnered with the center to create apprenticeship programs, giving residents hands-on experience in various industries. Schools collaborated to provide tutoring and scholarships for children whose families sought refuge at the center. Even celebrities and influencers lent their voices to the cause, amplifying its message of hope and renewal. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the center was the sense of community it fostered. Residents weren't treated as mere beneficiaries. They were active participants in shaping the center's future. Town hall-style meetings gave everyone a voice, ensuring decisions reflected the needs and aspirations of those directly affected. Friendships formed, bonds strengthened, and a shared commitment to rebuilding lives took root. For Ethan, this transformation wasn't just external. It was deeply personal. He found himself reconnecting with parts of himself he had long neglected. His conversations with Caleb, Jonas, and other residents reignited his passion for innovation. But this time, it was grounded in empathy. He began exploring ways to leverage technology to address systemic issues like affordable housing and access to health care. Ideas that had once seemed abstract now felt tangible, driven by real-world experiences and connections. One afternoon, during a particularly lively town hall meeting, a young woman named Maria stood up to speak. She had arrived at the center 6 months earlier with her 2 children, fleeing an abusive relationship. With the center's support, She had completed a nursing certification program and recently secured a full-time job at a nearby hospital. Her voice trembled as she addressed the room. "I don't know if I can ever thank you enough," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "This place gave me more than shelter. It gave me hope. Hope that I could be someone again. That my kids could have a better future." She paused, looking directly at Ethan, Caleb, and Jonas. "You saved us when we needed it most, and now I want to pay it forward." Her words resonated deeply with everyone present, including Ethan. As applause filled the room, he realized that the center wasn't just changing individual lives. It was creating a ripple effect, empowering people to lift others up. This cycle of kindness and gratitude was exactly what he had hoped to achieve. By the end of the year, the Caldwell Hope Initiative had expanded beyond its original location, opening satellite centers in neighboring cities. Each facility mirrored the flagship's philosophy of holistic support, tailored to meet the unique needs of its community. Caleb and Jonas traveled frequently to oversee these new branches, their confidence growing with every success story they witnessed. They became advocates for policy changes at the local and national levels, pushing for reforms to combat homelessness and poverty. Ethan, meanwhile, stepped back from his role as CEO of his tech company, handing the reins to a trusted colleague. Though he remained involved in strategic decisions, his primary focus shifted entirely to the foundation. He often joked that he had traded stock options for soup kitchens, but there was no regret in his voice. If anything, he seemed happier and more fulfilled than ever before. At the annual gala celebrating the foundation's first anniversary, Ethan delivered a heartfelt speech that left the audience in tears. Standing beneath a glittering chandelier, he recounted the twists and turns that had led him to this moment. From the courtroom drama that nearly destroyed him, to the unlikely alliance with Caleb and Jonas that saved him. "This journey taught me something invaluable," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "Success isn't measured by wealth or accolades. It's measured by the lives you touch and the legacy you leave behind. Caleb and Jonas showed me that true strength lies in lifting others up, even when you're struggling yourself." He turned to face the twins who sat at a front-row table, their faces glowing with pride. "To Caleb and Jonas, thank you for reminding me of my humanity. To everyone here tonight, thank you for believing in this mission and making it your own. Together we've proven that hope is contagious, and that when we stand united, nothing is impossible." The room erupted into applause, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. As Ethan stepped away from the podium, he embraced Caleb and Jonas tightly, the three of them laughing and crying simultaneously. In that moment, surrounded by friends, supporters, and beneficiaries of the foundation, they knew they had created something extraordinary. In the years that followed, the Caldwell Hope Initiative became a global model for addressing homelessness and poverty. Its founders were celebrated not as heroes but as catalysts for change, ordinary people who had dared to dream big and act boldly. Ethan, Caleb, and Jonas remained humble, always deflecting praise onto the communities they served. Their story served as a powerful reminder that adversity can lead to growth, that kindness can spark revolutions, and that redemption is possible for anyone willing to fight for it. As they looked toward the future, they carried with them the lessons of the past, not as burdens, but as sources of strength. Together, they had turned tragedy into triumph, proving that even in the darkest moments, humanity's light could shine brightest.